Welcome back, everyone. I'm Angela Black, in for Monique Lessan tonight. The show is called Matrix of Perception, and I am happy to be here in place of Monique. She had some family things that she was tending to, and I highly encourage you to spend all the time you can with loved ones these days, because who knows how many days are left on this planet. And I'm very excited to welcome to the second hour of the Matrix of Perception, the one, the only Dane Wigington of Geoengineeringwatch.org is with me right now. Welcome to the show, Dane.
Hello, Angela. Thanks for addressing the issue again.
Oh, my pleasure, and thank you for joining me. I have to give you a quick weather update here, because I know this is one of the topics that you often discuss. So I've got I'm full of frequency here. I've got different devices, but one of my devices says it's 59 degrees Fahrenheit. The other says it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and either way, we have snow falling. And I know I'm in the mountains, and I know that's, somewhat, it gives some leeway for at what temperature snow falls. But somewhere 50 degrees is not what I call, snow weather. And indeed, we're due for a storm for the next 3 days with snow here in South Lake Tahoe. And it is falling right now at the minimum 59 degrees, minimum 50 degrees, maximum 59 degrees right now. Craziness.
It's called chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. The patents have existed for this process going back as far as 1950. Those who think that this can't be done have simply not done their research. And in fact, in regard to converting what should have been a rainstorm into snow, the Chinese openly announced they were doing this, Angela. I would challenge any of your listeners to search online, Chinese scientists create artificial snowstorm, or Chinese scientists engineer snowstorm. They did this openly in Beijing in 2009 until the third time around they did $1 billion worth of damage. So the chemical nucleation can and is happening. In fact, we see them doing it all across the planet, especially in the continental U.S. But this lowers surface temperatures down. You'll see a drop in temperature after the nucleation process continues because cold air is dense. It settles to the surface. So as they chemically nucleate the clouds, they chemically convert that to frozen precipitation. It creates a colder layer on the ground, creates the illusion of winter when the temperatures don't justify this. So again, this is the tip of the geoengineering iceberg, if you will, but it's going on across the country, across the world. And this chemically nucleated product, if people search this online, again, it's being noted by farmers, ranchers, people who know what snow should be. They know what the temperature should be for it to snow. And again, this is nothing new. The science is there to back up what they're doing. So your observations are spot on. Yeah,
it is. It's mind-boggling and you know what's really mind-boggling about it to me is that the Gen Pop, as I refer to them, the people that are walking around that are not informed, literally don't see anything wrong. And I think that's, of course, a product of a well-designed media ploy to keep people, uninformed, but also breathing in the stuff ourselves, and not being aware that, we are breathing in I don't know if I want to call it like a vaccine necessarily, but a dumbing down of what's going on. We're breathing it in. And so if people aren't paying attention and they are comfortable with that, it's what's happening. It seems to be the design of the large picture, the big plan, and I see it every day here in South Lake Tahoe. People not paying attention to the fact that it's snowing at 50 or 59 degrees. Unbelievable.
Most of the world isn't paying attention to much of anything right now. I mean, we are in the fast track to total global extinction. That's a mathematical fact. And people are too busy on their iPhones or watching, whatever they watch on TV, the American Idol or Fox News or CNN. It doesn't make any difference. I mean, the whole purpose of mainstream media is to distract the population while the walls close in around them. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So we have almost everyone asleep at the wheel. But I would argue this, based on current trajectories, again, we're in the Thelma and Louise moment. We're through the guardrail. We're going to the bottom of the canyon. It's going to get rough soon, no matter what. Doesn't matter whether people believe me or not. It's going to happen. So people who are trying to remain in their bubble are going to have a rude awakening very soon. The sooner people face reality, the better off we'll be. Example I use, Angela, if you're standing in the middle of the freeway, are you better off facing traffic or turning your back to it? And that's about the situation we're in right now. The sooner people face traffic, face reality, and get in the fight for the common good, the more chance we have.
Yeah. And the way that people can do that is obviously to refer people to your website. And I know that you are the reluctant hero of sorts. I know you don't consider yourself to be anything but, an informed human who is concerned and not necessarily the leader of this movement. But, a lot of us look to you for guidance. And we look to your website, geoengineeringwatch.org, because it is just a wealth of links and articles and information that for the newbie as well as for the person who has been informed about geoengineering for a while. So that is, I guess, the best way to get the ball rolling, especially for those who are new to figuring out the concept that the Earth is being poisoned, one second at a time, one nanoparticle at a time. So when did you start geoengineeringwatch.org?
In 2009, and that was after a number of years of research we're already in. And again, truly, all of us are spokes in the wheel, and I appreciate the support very much from everybody. But we're all needed. We're all necessary spokes in the wheel, and it won't roll without all of us. So this is definitely a team effort, and without people like you to give us a voice, no matter how much research someone like me does, that research would not be heard. So again, it's definitely a team effort, and the immediacy of what we face needs to be driven home to people. People have been trained to be very influenced by their normalcy bias, and that bias needs to be shattered quickly because this equation is extremely non-linear. Our time frames right now, Angela, although people have been, again, trained to believe that major climate shifts, and that's what we face, a climate shift. This is not about just climate change. And by the way, the climate change term was really implemented in 1998 when the most major ramp up of the climate engineering programs were unleashed globally. The power structure knew that they would be causing radical fluctuations in temperature like we see now all the time. It goes from 100 degrees to snow in a day. Literally, we recorded this in Amarillo, Texas. So they had to have a term that would condition people to think this is normal. Or perhaps it's been warm in Lake Tahoe lately. Now it's snowing in the mid or upper 50s. People have been conditioned to just think that's normal because of the term climate change. But actually what we're going through right now should be described as a climate shift, which is something much more abrupt. So people's training that these sorts of changes take place over millennia or century or certainly many decades, not the case. On the course we're on right now, we're looking at probable astounding changes in the next 5 to 10 years, changes that are so immense that the current paradigm that we know is not sustainable. It's not sustainable much longer at all. We have marine ecosystems crashing by the day. We have whales washing up on the west coast shores, 10 to 15,000 seals. We have marine ecosystems crashing around the globe, terrestrial ecosystems crashing around the globe. The last 40 years, we've had a doubling of human populations, a decline in wildlife populations globally of nearly 2/3. We are on the fast track for a completely different reality. At the point in time, the power structure knows they can't maintain the delusion any longer. And I would argue that point is very, very close. They will play very big cards. And Jade Helm that's coming up is very likely a part of that. They're maneuvering right now. They're conditioning people to being accustomed to seeing military equipment and personnel in the streets. The noose is being pulled around our neck very, very quickly.
Spot on. It is spot on. I got goosebumps in a bad way because it is that creepy and it is that real. And it's very interesting to me to watch people that are in denial still regarding the huge, it's so exponentially vast, the interconnectivity of the, depopulation agenda. And, unfortunately, it seems to me that it is an accident gone worse. I was talking with Ralph last week, Ralph Ely, who you had recommended to be on my show, and he actually joined me for the first hour here. And I was talking to him last week, and I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh, was there ever an intent for good? Was it ever supposed to be good, the beginnings of geoengineering? I ask you that. Were there ever any good intentions regarding this?
I wish I could say there was, but historical data contradicts that notion. This has always been about power and control. But I will say this. I believe the power structure and their their delusion, felt that they could continue these programs indefinitely, felt that they could play God with the weather indefinitely without consequence. And again, something I refer to often because I've studied it in fairly great depth. There's a common thread with various forms of psychosis with psychopathic people. And that thread is this: there's a near total lack of comprehension as to the consequences of their actions, even to themselves, because people ask again and again and again, why would they do this to themselves? I name example after example after example. If we can go to the most recent examples of what they are doing to themselves, aside from the 2,000 nuclear bombs that have been detonated globally and contaminated all life, let's just look at Fukushima. Mm-hmm. Here we have one facility that may kill us all, and yet we have 30 more facilities on the books right now being built. Obama just approving $6.5 billion for 2 more facilities in Georgia. So we have like a power structure that's like a cancer, a headless, heartless, soulless beast that simply exists for its own proliferation, regardless of the fact that it will and is killing its host, the planet. So if we go back to the inception of these programs, the initial goal was always power and control. It continues to be power and control, but now I see what I believe to be a fraying of the power structure, as we would expect when there's not enough pieces of the pie to go around, or when the fracturing occurs because the paradigm is starting to fall apart. The fracturing is in our favor, of course, but now the power structure, I believe, is in a panic because they know they have unleashed Pandora. We have climate feedback loops now, perhaps as many as 50, that are now feeding the warming. The biggest of these loops is methane release. And we have mass methane release occurring in the Arctic right now. I monitor maps daily, maps that show, for example, Angela, the departure from normal high temperatures and departure from normal low temperatures. And if you look over the same region day in, day out, what you'll see is that the nighttime lows are rising twice as fast as the daytime highs. It's not cooling off at night. That's indicative to an atmosphere that's filling with greenhouse gases, methane again being the biggest nail in the coffin in that regard. Methane, you'll hear scientific community refer to methane as being 20 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas, but that's over a 100-year time horizon. So as we scale that down over a 10-year time horizon, methane could be 100 times more potent than CO2. Over a 30 to 60-day period, it can be many hundreds of times more potent than CO2. So it's like covering the surface of the planet with a layer of glass. It's happening now. Climate engineering has helped to trigger this. Now at this point, the power structure is simply scurrying to try to hide this. And if I could back up again, I meant to mention something about Ralph Ely and people like Ralph. I appreciate Ralph very, very much. He's come onto the scene with everything he has. He's devoting everything to this. You're devoting a lot to it, and a lot of people have just simply given up and walked away. And I want to express my highest regard to those who have not given up and who understand that for every person that we wake up, every single individual whose field of vision we widen, who we help to awaken, it matters. It absolutely matters. So again, I just wanted to express my gratitude before we move on to you, to Ralph, and to everyone else who's marching forward in this battle.
I appreciate that, and I'm humbled and glad to help, and anything I can do. I posted on Facebook, and I found some people that there's a lot of people posting, of course, pictures of their personal experience with geoengineering, etc. And I have found, unfortunately, a sad common ground with so many people. But I enjoy being part of the community, at least to help bring awareness. And it's just very odd to me to come across an individual in my community that just doesn't have a clue. And people are just now, I had someone the other day that is an intelligent individual who really never bothered to think about it. And he said, I saw something. It looked a little weird to me. And I got to bring awareness to the situation. I texted him your website because it is a great, it's an encyclopedia of sorts. And I hope that term is acceptable to you. But it is a great bevy of knowledge, all located in one spot. And I encourage people to go wherever they need to, but a lot of information is right there, and your website is a great catalyst. So I definitely I definitely will. Hold on one second. I got to hang up this call. I definitely enjoy, if I can say the word enjoy, bringing awareness to the population. Now, so thank you, and much power to you, brother in arms. Much power. So, okay. And of course, just to bring up very quickly, if people have not seen both What in the World Are They Spraying and Why in the World Are They Spraying, you are featured in both of those videos, are you not?
I am, and there's a number of films out there that are worth watching. In fact, one that was just brought to my attention today or yesterday, I think Ralph may have sent this to me, but it's a remake of Clifford Carnicom's initial film, which was called Aerosol Crimes. He released in 2005, which was a good film. I purchased with my own funds about 2,000 of those films and distributed them. But there's a film I'll be posting tomorrow. It's been out for a while, so a lot of people may have seen it, but it's a film called Cloud Cover, I think, and I might be getting that name wrong, but anyway, I'll post it on my sites tomorrow. But by Clifford Carnicom, that's a very good film too. 43 minutes. George Barnes also has done a film called Look Up. I'm not sure if you may have seen that or not.
I haven't seen it yet. No, not yet.
For people on that one, in fact, on that site, skyderalert.com, SKYDER alert.com. I think George has an app. I don't have anything to do with that site directly, but George has done his best. He's built an app that people can use to photograph their skies, and the app will automatically send their photographs to the legislatures in their area. Pretty handy tool. And he's done a film that's won about a dozen film awards as well, narrated by William Baldwin. So that's one more choice for people to look at. And then we have on the home page of Geoengineering Watch, there's also more hard-hitting data presentations for those who are maybe already waking up. But the other films, all the films that we just mentioned are all good intro films.
Great. And I looked on your site. There's another upcoming documentary also called Overcast. That's coming up as well.
I saw that. Yeah, it looked like that had promise as well. So, again, the more we have, the more tools we have in the toolbox, so much the better. Because, again, our situation is extremely immediate. And if we look, Angela, what has the power structure done with these programs over the years? Where have they used these programs that we can now see the dots connecting? They have used this as a weapon for 5 to 6 decades. We saw historically documented use in Vietnam, Project Popeye. They were so successful at modifying the weather over the Ho Chi Minh Trail that by 76, the UN passed a resolution forbidding weather modification in wartime. But we know nobody pays attention to the UN. We know that the NATO countries, the Western powers, appear to have droughted out, for example, all the sub-Saharan African countries for decades, bringing them to their knees, forcing them to allow U.S. occupation, forcing them to allow GMO crops, for example. And where's the most recent example we have of countries being droughted out, destabilized, and governments toppled? All the Middle Eastern countries have all gone through protracted record drought prior to being toppled. From Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Iran. This is not an accident. This tool, this covert tool of weather warfare, which is also inseparable from biological warfare, when they're spraying toxic elements and we are forced to breathe that, every single one of us, you can't separate those two, weather warfare and biological warfare. So we have, again, the president of Iran, VP of Iran, on the floor of the UN, stating publicly their countries are being droughted out by NATO. There's absolutely no question. Now we can list some other examples, and let's tie this into vaccines as well. We have countries that are slaughtered with a climate cataclysm. Then you have U.S. occupation. You have mass vaccination that occurs after every single catastrophe. Like let's take Cyclone Haiyan in the Philippines. You remember the massive cyclone that tore through the Philippines a year and a half ago?
Yes.
That cyclone intensified extremely anomalously right before making landfall. U.S. immediately went in under humanitarian pretext, began building bases, mass vaccination started. Same thing happened in Haiti. We see countries like in 2011, Thailand, for example, refused the U.S. an air base that we believe the Thai government knew was going to be for weather mod. And immediately that Thailand was wiped out under record flooding. We saw Slovenia about a year ago they were showing reluctance to some EU policy. They found themselves hit with an unprecedented 6-inch ice storm, leveled their country. Pakistan, 2010, resistance to U.S. policy, immediately 20% of their country was underwater. Weather warfare is raging around the globe. This is a tug of war with the life support system of the planet Earth. And now what's being drowned out? The whole western half of the U.S. lower 48. How much destabilization will that cause when there's not enough food, when people are struggling to get a drop of water to come out of their tap? This is not an accident. And when people think, why would they do this? Why wouldn't they do this? Why wouldn't we expect a government run by psychopathic individuals? It's not even a government. We don't have a country with a government. We have a government with a country. It's simply a criminal cabal that owns a country. Why wouldn't they do this? People who make the mistake of thinking the government's there for our benefit are sadly mistaken.
Indeed. The ideological government of the past and possibly of our forefathers is no longer in existence. Obviously it's a corporation here, and corporations have been given more rights than humans these days. And unfortunately, what is not recognized, but luckily there's some hope, even though we're so immediate. Everything is so immediate. But the rights of nature is such a beautiful movement and topic. It's of course everything. The rights of Mother Earth is everything, and it's so interesting to me that it is just now becoming more talked about, more fought for, that type of thing. That stream has the right not to be polluted. These trees have the right not to be sprayed with pollutants and medical nanoparticles, etc. Did I say medical? I meant metal nanoparticles, etc. It's just horrible. All of it. And so you say, why wouldn't they? And I guess that is the nature of, unfortunately, that beast.
It is. Yeah. I mean, how many examples do we need of this? I mean, we could go on all night about the examples of this sort of blatant environmental destruction. The industrialized society by nature destroys natural resources to exist. And this paradigm was never sustainable. It's about to collapse. And I know a lot of people don't want to believe that. In fact, unfortunately, many don't want to engage in the fight for the common good unless they're guaranteed a happy ending. And I hope that changes, because we should want to fight for the common good because it's the right thing to do. We should want to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, period, without any guarantees. If you're looking for a guarantee, then you're not really acting on the right motives. And nobody's ever had any guarantees about life ever. Life's a seasonal occupation. The season's not very long. But if we care about our children, if we truly love them, how can we not engage in this particular battle, especially when our children can't even breathe without sucking this stuff into their lungs? We see the asthma, the allergies off the charts. I mean, I'm astounded. Every other commercial is a child's asthma allergy commercial, and take this particular medication because it won't make your child drowsy and when they're in class, so it'll just disable their immune system so they'll quit coughing. And we truly live in an insane asylum right now. But again, no matter how dark the horizon looks, and it does look dark, it's not yet black. There is a glimmer of light if we can simply pull together. And the single greatest thing we could accomplish, Angela, is to expose these programs so that the entire population of the world would know that they are not just a liability to the power structure, but not just expendable, I should say, but an actual liability. But if it weren't for the population carrying out these dictates of the power structure, we would not be in this situation. So although the power structure bears incredible guilt and responsibility for what's happened, the population bears much also, because they have not wanted to wake up. Unless they're forced to wake up, they have not wanted to wake up. And I hope that changes. And with everybody working together, perhaps we can still beat the train to the intersection, but we have to pick up the pace. We truly do. People need to learn how to be effective at sharing the message, at putting it out to others. Again, I'll use Ralph for an example. Again, Ralph has done an excellent job of sending constant credible data out to everyone he knows so that they can only ignore it so long. And I think some of his circles are starting to respond. And we need that kind of effective activism, if you will. We need activists to be active. And if they send out credible data continuously, if they don't just rant at their friends and point at the sky, if they pass on credible data, we'll gain traction.
That's an excellent thought. Yes, be well informed and spread the word is the bottom line. A question I have for you is that's coming from a private individual I know. Is there such a thing as an antidote to all of this biochemo warfare, et cetera? And do the elite hold it? Is there an end to it? Can we stop it?
We must stop it. There's no other option. If we don't stop it, we are in a very limited time horizon. As far as what the power structure is doing, is the damage to the planet irreparable at this point? Mathematically, the answer is yes. We will never know the planet that we have known. We are far past the tipping point. Mm-hmm. Can the planet still sustain life if we were able to stop climate engineering? Let's hope so. I think life is so tenacious that, again, the examples that we see, and I've used before, when we see a blade of grass shooting out of the tiniest crack in the asphalt jungle, life is very tenacious if it has a chance. Right now, it doesn't have a chance. The planet's life support systems are virtually straitjacketed, handcuffed, chained. You can't swim like that. You can't. The planet can't support itself, sustain life when it's completely shackled from being able to respond to the damage done. What does the power structure do? We know what I've shared in the past, what I know about chelation programs that are not available to the general public, a facility in Germany. I know a researcher who's been there. Now, my latest discussion with him, he's been treated 10 times in this facility. And I'm not sure why he's going back so many times. He has the connections to get in, but the blood is pulled from the body. I think you're there for 2 days. The blood is virtually cleansed and flushed through the system. And a tremendous amount of toxins came out of him. In fact, the aluminum that came out of his first cleanse was about 1,000% higher than the top of the chart. It was an astounding amount. He said he felt like he was coming out of the clouds, just the clarity, mental clarity. And certainly this is plausible. I believe what he's saying, because we're all breathing this stuff in. It has known cognitive effects. And when you're getting mentally foggy over the course of years, you tend not to really realize how much fog you're in. And so what he described was interesting to me. And this is one process the power structure appears to be using to exempt themselves from the effects for the short run. But again, what they're doing to the planet is not something that just goes away. If you shut off industrialized civilization tomorrow, if you shut down climate engineering tomorrow, there's way, way too much inertia for any type of equilibrium like that which we have known to reoccur for perhaps 10 to 20 million years. And this is based on paleo data. The PETM event, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, 55 million years ago, methane mass expulsion, not as severe as what appears to be happening today, but we had equilibrium periods that were 10 to 20 million years. We had a dead zone in the center part of the planet from 30 degrees south to 30 degrees north. We had terrestrial temperatures in that zone as much as 140 degrees, ocean temperatures 110. That's the track we're on. So again, we must turn the ship, Angela. This is simply something people must make a priority. Of all the issues we face, if you have one that you know is the gaping hole in the bottom of the boat, and climate engineering is that issue, we must focus on that common goal.
Yeah. So I'm talking to an individual in the background, Billy Hayes, who is a whistleblower for geoengineering and HARP, and he told me that it's a process he goes through. It's called dual dialysis. That's one of the blood cleansing processes that exists when you have aluminum in your body, et cetera. So it does exist. These treatments do exist, but that is short term. And the thing is they must be completely delusional, all these elite, to think that there's actually going to be a world for them to, while they, grab all their money, grasp all of their power and through something you mentioned yesterday on Sean David Morton's show, weather trading derivatives, et cetera. However, whether it's war, whether it's power, whether it's financial gain, whatever it is, cut to 5 years from now. And, when the planet doesn't look like it does, it will never look the same. I've often said this. When we wake up 5 years from now, this is not going to look like the same planet. We're in the end phases of what did look like the planet as we knew it. And, so I just don't understand, how few of these people there are going to be left and why they think that is some type of ideal reset button. I don't get it. Depopulation, it doesn't make sense to me. It's weird to watch the trend of people latch onto that and think that that's the solution, that somehow, grasp, and the few that are able to grasp monies and power and everything through war, that somehow after the desolation and the depopulation of most of mankind, and for that matter, wildlife and plant life, etc., that there will be anything to salvage. What's the point? What do you get? What is the winning? What is the win at the end of that game? There isn't one. There just isn't. I don't see it.
I want to, if Billy's listening, I want to say hello to Billy. I appreciate him and what he's tried to do for the common good and continues to do so. My gratitude to you, Billy. And as far as those that are trying to profit off this issue, the weather trading derivatives, which in fact that rabbit hole is very deep. You have right now cities located around coastal areas or areas that are susceptible to weather cataclysm money's being extorted from them more or less, that they are having to pay for quote weather insurance that plugs into the weather derivatives in order to avoid cataclysm. So what you have is the pirates grabbing all the loot they can off the deck of the ship as the ship goes down. And this is where the equation becomes very complicated, and it's important for people to remember that this is not a simple this or that equation, because too many people don't try to take that complexity into account. And if they give a very simplistic answer, they're climate engineering for just this reason. They're just trying to kill us all. They're just doing it for Monsanto, or it's much more complicated. There's many layers to this. So yes, you have Monsanto and others capitalizing off the fact that the ship is going down, but they're just vultures feasting on the carrion, on the carcass, if you will. Mm-hmm. There's much bigger wheels in play here. And as far as population goes, again, people need to stand on credible facts. That gives our efforts the traction it needs to go forward. So, for example, in regard to the state of the climate, Angela, there's no question the planet is in meltdown now. Whatever a person wants to consider the cause, people automatically think you must be a Gore fan when you say that. And I say it every time I mention this. I couldn't be more of a not a Gore fan, or carbon credits, all those scams. But it's important to understand, to look at the whole picture, not just the eastern U.S. And by the way, as I speak to you, I'm looking at the latest surface temperature analysis globally, as has been the case for the last 2 years. The most anomalously cold place below normal temperatures on the entire planet Earth is the eastern half of the U.S. lower 48. Everything else on the planet is bright red, far above normal. So for the people living in that eastern part, again, they don't think it could be warm anywhere because it's not where they are. They need to look at the bigger picture. In regard to population, back to that question, it's not popular to say the planet can't support the population that's here. And if you say that, people think automatically you must agree with the power structure. That's not the case at all. Again, if Al Gore or the power structure says the Earth is round, I'm not going to say it's flat because I don't want to agree with them. The fact is the planet can't sustain the population that's here, but that doesn't mean I agree with anything these people are doing. They should be the first ones to walk the plank. They should be the first ones. They're the ones that help create this situation. They're the ones that produce the carbon paradigm that we find ourselves in. So they should be the first one to go. But when people say things like the whole population, and I've heard this many times, the whole population of the planet could fit in the state of Texas and have such and such a room. What does that mean? What bearing does that have on anything logically? And I realize what I'm saying is not popular with certain people, but I challenge them. Stand on facts. It's about resources. And we have resource wars going on around the planet right now. That's what all the conflicts are in the Middle East. It's resource wars, African conflicts, resource wars. It's not about how much space you have around you, how much solar room. It's about resources. So if people look at the whole picture, and even let's plug that into climate engineering, because that is also one of the ways that they're manipulating our all of our scenarios right now to control those resources. When they cut the water off the West, and now they're taking the water rights, that's exactly what they're doing. What's it about? It's about resources again. So the equations are complex, but the bottom line is for people that are trying to give a simple mantra, the planet is warming and climate engineering is making it a lot worse, not better, and poisoning every single one of us and the entire web of life in the process. That's pretty simple.
Yeah. I was talking with Ralph Ely the prior hour, and I likened to, he was mentioning that they're kind of in that cycle where, the global elite, the people that are causing all of this geoengineering to happen on a daily basis, that, if it were to just stop suddenly, I mean, is that a solution? Is that a possibility? And if so, my question is, they've been poisoned, to deal with the pain, et cetera. And then, to just pull them from it, that could cause, major withdrawal syndromes, et cetera. And I kind of likened planet Earth to going through that withdrawal. It may be really, really, knee-jerk in fashion, and it could be very, very, devastating. But I think it's the only solution is an actual cold turkey. And it's just, of course, it's an uninformed opinion. But I'm just wondering, can we go cold turkey? Is the withdrawal symptom that is going to happen on planet Earth from, stopping geoengineering a possibility to withstand?
Your perspective on that is exactly spot on. Everything you said is exactly on target. We must stop completely, but when we do, it's called double collapse scenario. And that means the rebound that occurs once the aerosol spraying stops will be horrific. Mm-hmm. The escalation of the hydrological cycle, the rain cycle, will be cataclysmic around the globe. The planet has been trying to cool itself for decades and completely thwarted from that effort by climate engineering. So the blowback will be unimaginable. People on coastal regions susceptible to hurricanes are going to get annihilated. It's going to happen. One way or another, it's going to happen. The atmosphere carries about 7% more moisture for every degree of warming. What we're seeing right now, and this is contrary to what a lot of people have chosen to believe, especially if they live in Boston and they're under record snow, they've chosen to believe a lot of things that aren't reality in the overall picture. But the atmosphere carries 7% more moisture for every degree of warming. We're seeing an under-reporting of temperatures. I have a friend with the Union of Concerned Scientists that has taken measurements, and now Ralph has actually taken some measurements, and he's very helpful in that regard for me in this region. But the results they're getting are about the same, about a 4 to 5 degree under-reporting of the official temperature, which means it's a hell of a lot hotter than we even understand already or are being told. So once they're not aerosolizing, once the convection can occur as it's trying to, we're going to see an unbelievable amount of rain overall. We'll see deluges that are unimaginable to people right now. We've seen a few of those where it slips through the cracks and the climate engineers aren't aerosolizing everything. But we're going to see cyclonic rotations that are beyond comprehension to people. And let's look, Angela, where they're suppressing cyclones and where they're not, where they're suppressing hurricanes, tornadoes and where they're not. We've had a record low tornado season. Why? Because they're keeping the eastern U.S. cool. They're aerosolizing everything. There's a canopy of reflective aerosols which stops or slows the convection. So they're suppressing the earth, trying to release that heat. Same thing with cyclonic rotations. Angela, you've probably noted or maybe considered, why hasn't there been a major hurricane hit the U.S. coast since 2006? Why? When major hurricanes are wreaking havoc in the Western Pacific, why wouldn't they happen here? The water temperatures are just as warm. Why wouldn't they happen? Because they're being suppressed with great effort. Hurricane Sandy was not a major hurricane, did major damage, not a major hurricane. And by the way, Hurricane Sandy appears to have been a message for somebody. It was a demonstration of their power. There's no chance, meteorologically speaking, that the meteorological community could know that cyclone would take a 90-degree westerly turn 7 days ahead of time. No chance. That was a demonstration of power shot across the bow. But other than that hurricane, no major U.S. hurricane landfalls. No hurricanes are allowed to spin in the Gulf of Mexico. Why? Because, one, they don't want the massive tidal damage because sea levels are rising much, much faster than predicted. Challenge anybody. Investigate what I'm saying. Also, in the Gulf, they don't want the sea of oil that's sitting on the bottom of the Gulf that's being sprayed with Corexit, perhaps even now at the wellhead for the Macondo oil well. They don't want that oil stirred up. So ask yourself why the U.S. has very few cyclones, nothing that hits landfall, while the rest of the world is getting pounded. They're suppressing the planet's attempt to cool itself, Angela. And back to your original question, once it's stopped, all hell's going to break loose.
And again, it's the only answer.
It is the only answer. Yes, it is the only answer. It's the only way forward. And the drug addict example you gave is exactly right. If it's tough for a drug addict to get off of heroin, does that mean he shouldn't? No, of course not. The only way is to stop completely and immediately and go through whatever you have to go through if you're going to have any chance at all. That is the only way forward. You're exactly right.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw it. I saw it earlier today when I was speaking with Ralph, and I thought, I get this. I see, because a lot of people want to know can we stop it? And if we stop it, how's that going to happen? And it was the immediate thing that came to my mind. So I'm glad the visual was painted for you. Okay, now let's see. I was going to ask a new question, but I'm just wondering if there's any other thoughts you want to continue on before I go there.
Well, the sea level rise is
Yes.
one thing. Again, right now, mathematically, there is 70 to 100 feet of sea level rise baked in. No chance of stopping it, period. And when we see models that estimate 1 meter by the 21st, end of the 21st century, those models are so radically conservative of what is likely happening right now. So we could see, and this has happened, paleo data proves this has happened in the Earth's past, we could see 3 meters of sea level rise in a decade under the right conditions. They're already pumping Miami out with every high tide. Sea level rise is not uniform around the globe as many people think. So you have people in a certain location, they feel they're going to see sea level rise, with their own visual observations. It's not the case. If we're talking about a foot of sea level rise, you're not necessarily going to see that, but that wreaks havoc around the globe. You start adding to that, and you're going to have a lot more problems. And to give you an idea how much the ocean will rise eventually, you have about 197 feet of sea level rise built into Antarctica, about 21 to 24 feet in Greenland, depending on the modeling you look at, about 10 to 15 feet in the rest of the Earth's glaciers. You could have 235 to 240 feet of sea level rise will happen eventually. And that eventually is going to be likely in the track we're on exponentially sooner than any of the worst case scenarios are currently predicting.
Yeah, again, it's not going to be the same planet. Anyone in denial is in for a rude awakening, obviously. We are here, and it is not deniable. And I do find it odd to hear experts or quote unquote, people in the media. I don't want to call them experts, but people who, completely just laugh it off. And, for instance, just a quick side note, Greenpeace, at one point in my life, I wanted to believe in Greenpeace and their agenda, et cetera. But unfortunately, it's become just that, the agenda. And, I saw an article a few weeks back, their view on chemtrails. Apparently, there is not enough research, to warrant more study, according to Greenpeace on their website. It's just unbelievable. It's just, I feel like we're all just backwards, inside out, upside down. It doesn't make any sense, none of it. And, you are one of the few people, in the media. Well, a lot of us, in the alternative media world are trying to get the word out, but you are one of the people that makes the most sense. And, call all the problems on the planet what you may, but, if we can't breathe and we can't eat and we can't, drink water, then chances are nothing else matters. Just absolutely nothing else matters. There isn't anything else. It's the end. The end. So I just want
That's why I'm focused on this issue.
Yeah, obviously. And go ahead.
No, host first.
Oh, and you found yourself on this journey by accident. If you wanted to tell people, I mean, it wasn't that you set out to be on this mission.
Not at all. I've never been politically oriented or active at all. I'm not an activist in any sense. I grew up in a very, very polluted, smoggy world in Southern California. I remember a particular day being 11 years old on a baseball field hacking on smog. You couldn't see a quarter mile. And I remember that moment looking at the adults and wondering why they weren't concerned. I mean, it was an epiphany that it made me move out of that area as fast as I could. And at 11 years old, I understood that it was very, very wrong. So I simply, when I finally got to the Pacific Northwest where I live now, in the middle of the wilderness on the east side of Lake Shasta, expecting to find clean air, which I longed for my entire life, and then starting to lose tremendous amounts of solar power from whatever these aircraft were emitting, I did not want to find anything in the rain. I researched the ingredients, the primary elements in the patents, and I'd hoped I would not find them in my precipitation because I did not want this battle. Mm-hmm. But I did find them from an initial baseline reading of 7 parts per billion of aluminum. Subsequent readings in the next 5 years escalated nearly 50,000%. Now, 7 parts per billion, the baseline which we had to use, already high, should be less than 1 ppb, if anything at all, where I'm at. So from an already high baseline, an escalation of 50,000% nearly to 3,450 ppb, how do you turn away from that when you know every breath you take, every breath your children take, everything you love and live for, the forest, the trees, and the frogs, everything is being systematically poisoned? How do you turn away from that? You can't. And when you go back to the experts that you just, you're exactly on target in the way you perceive this, Angela. Let's look at the, quote, experts for just a moment. How many degreed people does it take to make the monumental mistakes that we see every single day? How many PhDs produce the pharmaceuticals that we see advertised on a commercial one day, and then a short period later we see the legal people come on and say, by the way, if you took this, you can sue because now we know it did this and this and this. These are the experts. These are the PhDs that have brought us to near certain extinction. Let's look at it on a bigger scale. How much education does it take? How many experts does it take to build humanity's largest cities at sea level, knowing that it must rise at some point? The term expert is used very loosely in our society, and people have been trained to believe unless you have a piece of paper from a peer-reviewed, establishment ordained society, then you can't know the truth. And this is so incredibly wrong. In regards to Greenpeace, I've been on national radio with their top scientist. If anybody listens to the show, and you probably could find that by Googling his name and mine, but no question people who listen to that show knew. He absolutely knew that geoengineering was real and ongoing. And I pressed him as hard as I could on air without being pulled off the air. I quoted him as much as I possibly could. And the fact that they quote environmental organizations, and I am an environmentalist, no one could care more about the environment than me. But if the whole house is burning down, how do you ignore that? And I've had the hardest time reaching environmentalists, and I'm not faulting all of them, but I'm saying they're the toughest community of all to reach because they don't want to come out of their comfort zone. And if they don't, the epitome of hypocrisy lies on them who claim to care about the environment and that are doing absolutely nothing. And I pushed that Greenpeace scientist as hard as I could because on other shows, I was on a radio show with another globally recognized scientist, Simon Donner from UC British Columbia. As soon as I pressed him, I was off the air instantly. That's how much they protect these people.
Yeah, I mean, if it's funded, chances are it doesn't want to know the truth.
That's right.
Wow. Let's see. Wow, we have a few minutes left, just about three minutes left. So I wanted to sort of address the Pacific blob for a second, if you had any thoughts on that, and then obviously let's wrap up the show with some thoughts of hope. I hope.
The warm water.
Yes.
Now, a couple of aspects to that. There may be some geothermal activity there on the seafloor, and I know a few people have felt that is the case. But in addition to that, we know part of what they've done, and this is where the situations are complex again, by keeping this, quote, ridiculously resilient ridge over the western U.S., that's part of how they have cooled the eastern U.S. It also appears to be directly connected to what they're trying to do in the Arctic to chemically ice nucleate and keep whatever cold air they can there to keep what last bit of ice there is in the Arctic left. So those are all connected. But in regards to the blob, when they have this ridiculously resilient ridge over the west, it pushes the trade winds backward. It has helped to bottle that heat up. I did an article about a week ago on the suppression of El Nino, which they have been actively doing since 2007 because they don't want the ocean to release that heat because they know it will shatter records, even though they're falsifying temperature readings down as much as they can, wherever they can. They have tried to suppress that heat, and they have, in fact, caused a tremendous amount of heat buildup in the oceans. And they're also, Angela, have caused the oceans to stratify. And as that happens and the heat builds up, now we're getting seabed gas releases, CH4, methane, CS2, hydrogen sulfide. So as this gassing occurs, we're heading toward what's called a Canfield Ocean, where the oceans die around the globe, and that's the track we're on. But that blob, again, could have a couple scenarios adding to it. The fact that they have suppressed that heat, kept it in the ocean by the ridge that has helped to build that, and there may be some geothermal activity. But we're seeing ocean temps around the globe that are astoundingly high. We've seen sea temps in the Arctic in the last 6 months at points that were 35 degrees above normal, 35. So the oceans are warm everywhere.
Unbelievable. All right. Well, unfortunately and fortunately, I know you've got another radio show coming up. That's crazy.
I do. But what we can do, if I can live one final note,
please.
we can, if everyone, instead of being depressed and angry and crawling into a hole, turn that anger into fuel for the fight. Arm yourself with credible data. Learn the basics. Keep that data with you. Flyers. Sorry about that. Informational cards. Keep those with you and share that data with others. Every day counts in this fight.
Thank you so much, Dane, for joining me tonight here on Matrix of Perception, and we will. I'll be in touch. And congratulations on keeping up the great fight. And let's hope we all live.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.